Call Me Ismay. Again, it's another Kate Kirsten designed, wonderful bit of artwork that she came up with there. It matches the shirt. Call Me Ismay. This book asks a very peculiar question. And bear with me, there's a point to this. It up front asks the question, not in so many words, what if the Titanic was doomed to destruction by the presence of vampires? Now, it started as a joke. April Fool's Day, 2012. The Titanic was everywhere. It was almost the 100th anniversary of the sinking. You couldn't turn on your computer or the TV without hearing something about the Titanic anniversary. It was everywhere. At the same time, for books and TV, what was dominant? Twilight. True Blood. Vampires all day, all the time. So as a joke, I went on Facebook that morning on April 1st, 2012, and said, folks, that's it. I'm going for the commercial gold. I'm going to put vampires on the Titanic. Now, if there's one life lesson that I've learned without question in my time here on this planet, it's this. If an idea rings as loud and as long in your head as this one did for me, there's probably a darn good reason why. I couldn't sleep. It drove me nuts. I realized I had some serious questions to ask myself. Wait a minute, what if? The spark was going off in the back of my brain there. So I thought, okay, I've got to answer some very serious questions here. What if? How did they get there? How did vampires get on the Titanic? What did they do? Why? Was it going to be serious? Was it going to be campy? Well, I decided right away I'm going to be absolutely dead serious. I want this to read like a historical document of what happened. So I made that choice pretty firmly on. Now, in the course of actually committing to this book, which turned out to be an enormous commitment, there were two very strange little things that happened to me during the course of the writing, and I haven't really talked about them much publicly, but I'll share them with you here today, because I know how they sound. But they are interesting. Backing up a little bit here, the book is dedicated to my father. My father, Dr. Stephen J. McDevitt. The intro reads, for my father, Dr. Stephen J. McDevitt, who first introduced me to the Titanic. When I started to do some deep research in the book, I had always wanted to write something about the Titanic, but I couldn't crack the code. I couldn't think of anything new to bring to the table until this idea presented itself, and I thought, okay, if we do this, what's the approach going to be? Now, I've always been interested and fascinated in the story of Bruce Ismay. Bruce Ismay was the head of the White Star Line. Now, Bruce Ismay, who you may be a little familiar with if you're familiar with the Titanic story at all, he probably is the single most mysterious person on that ship. Because if you go back and if you read his testimony that he gave at the American and British inquiries after the disaster, some of his answers are just baffling. I don't know. I don't recall. That's all I can tell you. I've had some people say, Sean, he was probably suffering from shock, but I don't think so. If you go back and read the testimony in its entirety, and I have, a lot of it just seems conveniently evasive. So I was always rather intrigued by Bruce Ismay's seeming evasiveness at these inquiries, and I thought, well, how can we fill in some of the gaps here? And I decided that I've got to do some deep research on Bruce Ismay if I'm in fact going to write this book. So I did. And one of the first things that I learned about Bruce Ismay is that his birthday was on December 12th. As it just so happens, my father's birthday was on December 12th. Now, my father unfortunately passed away in 2010, much too young. But he was the one who first introduced me to the story of the Titanic. He told me about the Titanic long before it was cool. It was 1976. I was all of about 8 years old. He was reading this book. I noticed he was reading a book. On the cover was this painting of a ship, a giant ship that looked like it was about to make a plunge into the ocean. I'd never heard of this. And I said, well, Dad, what are you reading? What is that? Well, the book is called The Maiden Voyage by Jeffrey Marcus. I highly recommend it. I'm not entirely sure if it's in print at the moment, but you can probably find it at a library. Wonderful book. Maiden Voyage by Jeffrey Marcus. So I pressed him for info, and he told me a story I couldn't believe. To me, it sounded like something out of the Bible. You're telling me that the biggest ship in the world at that time, on its maiden voyage, a ship that was called practically unsinkable by its designers, strikes an iceberg, sinks, and takes enough people to populate a small town. This can't be. I kept asking him over and over, did this really happen? Now, for even the most casual Titanic buff, I'm sure they'll agree, once that ship casts its spell, it's over. It will never let you go. It's a story that won't go away. It is endlessly fascinating, and even today, we are still, 100 years later, learning about the disaster, what it meant, what caused it, what we have still yet to learn from the disaster. It's an extraordinary story. So when I came across this bit of trivia that Bruce Ismay, who I'd been interested in all along, that he had been born on December 12th, I thought, oh, okay, that's a nice little circle completing itself there. Fast forward about 6 months. It took me 6 months to get all of my characters on the boat at the same time. The book goes back and forth in time. The book opens about 6 months prior to the disaster. Then it takes you to some of Bruce Ismay's testimony after the disaster. Then it goes back to about 3 months before the disaster. Then it goes back to more testimony from Bruce Ismay. And it kind of weaves back and forth like this until we bring the timeline together and everyone is on Southampton on the boat at the same time. It took me 6 months to get that far. Now, I realized that I had a big problem, or a big issue that needed to be addressed, was how do we tie vampires to the disaster? Well, the truth is they're tied into it in many forms. Not the least of which is what they decide to do. They have information that the ship is headed into dangerous waters. They know about the ice warnings. So, in the dark of night, at an appropriate time, they decide we're going to distract the crew, specifically the crew that's in the crow's nest. Now, I knew for months this was the direction I was heading, that there was going to be a spell or something cast by the vampires at a crucial moment. And I didn't know what I was going to use. I thought about maybe paraphrasing something biblical. I honestly didn't know what I wanted to use for a chant. Well, interest of full disclosure here, I've always had, somewhat digressing here, but I've always had an interest in the Freemasons. They fascinate me. I'm not a traveler. My father was not a traveler. However, my great-grandfather on my father's side was. And through the years, I don't know how I wound up with it, I have a manual of Masonic Lodge rituals and rules and that sort of thing. Somehow this dog-eared leather book wound up in my hands. Well, tying things together here, in the book, the two vampires have gone rogue. They are Masons who are fully corrupt and doing terrible things in the name of Freemasonry, and it's completely unfair because they're obviously evil. They're not coming from a virtuous place. And it occurred to me, hey, I've got this manual here of rituals and rites. Maybe I can find something in here that will work for the spell for the vampires to cast at the appropriate moment. So I start flipping through, and I find something that starts talking about death, time. I thought, okay, this has promise. And I realized if I changed the order of some of the words, and if I changed the inflections, and also changed some of the definitions or interpretations of certain words, this could actually be interesting. So I get into it and I start writing it, and I'm thinking, wow, this is really interesting. What is this? And I go back a few pages to find out, what exactly am I pulling from here? And as God is my witness, it says, funeral hymn traditionally sung to the tune of Nearer My God to Thee. My hair on the back of my neck stood on end, and I almost ran out of the room. I could not believe my luck. Luck? I don't know. I started to wonder, am I dabbling into something that I shouldn't be dabbling into? But I took it as a great sign that I had to be on the right track with this idea. Because I knew just the pitch of putting vampires in the Titanic by itself would be high concept, but you better deliver on some level. And I think that I did. It was a long and very arduous process, but I was pleased with the way that it turned out. Thank you.